Whether you think of ancient Rome, African tribe leaders, the Arab slave trade, or white plantation owners, it is easy to believe that slavery is a thing of the past. The sad reality is that slavery is very much still a modern phenomenon. As of today, 167 countries still practice some form of modern slavery to varying levels of barbarity. According to World Population Review, India has the highest number of slaves. Nearly 8 million Indians meet the definition of living in slavery. Presumably, this is because of its tradition of forced marriage, its high population, and incredible wealth inequality. China is second with nearly 4 million, followed by North Korea, Nigeria, Iran, Indonesia, Congo, Russia, Philippines, and Afghanistan. Any observer can see that poverty as well as political and religious tyranny are contributing factors. In fact, some religious texts even promote slavery by permitting believers to take non-believers or believers of other faiths as slaves. This is part of what inspired or gave religious justification to child sex traffickers in the UK. The International Labour Office describes modern slavery as not just labourers owned by other people, but also forced marriages, state-imposed forced labour, and victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Now, if we revise the previous list to percentages of people affected, the results are different. Number 1 is North Korea. Over 10% of all North Koreans are enslaved, followed by Eritrea, the Burundi at around 4%, Central African Republic, Afghanistan, Mauritania, South Sudan, Pakistan, Cambodia, and Iran. It is saddening to think as the world tries to move on from the transatlantic slave trade, people are still being bought and sold as commodities. This is not some wishy-washy definition of slavery either. There are varying degrees, but in some countries, people, even kids, are beaten and forced to work for free in harrowing conditions like salt mines. Sadly, as of 2018, it was shown that once again, Africans have the highest rate of enslavement in the world by their own race. The Global Slave Index showed 9.2 million Africans were enslaved in 2018. As mentioned, Eritrea is one of the worst culprits. The one-party state leader, Isaias Afwerki, has installed a national conscription service in which citizens are forced to join the armed forces seemingly forever. Other citizens were forced to work in building the state's first modern mine. A Canadian business named Nevsun is the majority owner of the mine. Mauritania was the last country in the world to officially make slavery illegal in 1980. However, this was more down to international outrage than general concern, and punishment is barely enforced. Sadly, generations of slaves are born into slavery underneath families of traditional slave owners. The government has been shown to intimidate slaves who try and escape from their masters. In recent years, a seemingly impossible act of time travel emerged, showing video footage of slaves being sold in auctions. Sadly, this wasn't a miraculous act of time travel to a barbaric past, but evidence of a cruel and hidden practice in Africa. Also, The largely forgotten Arab slave trade of Africans still exists today. The Arab slave trade was the first trade outside of Africa to enslave Africans and was arguably more barbaric than Western slavers. After travelling across the ocean, they often had to walk shackled across the Sahara Desert to their new home of unpaid servitude in Saudi Arabia. They also preferred to take African women as slaves to live as their concubines. As previously stated, this type of sexual slavery is condoned by their religion. Men and boys were castrated so that they could not reproduce, which is why there is little heritage of former slaves in the nation. Black slaves simply were not allowed to breed in Arab countries, unlike the Western world where former slaves were left to integrate. Castration was an extremely risky procedure at the time also. Only around 10% survived. From 2015 onwards, women from Mauritania have been shipped to Saudi Arabia with the false promise of jobs. However, this has largely been a human trafficking operation to bring free labour to the country. The 2022 Qatar World Cup, which was already marred with controversy because allegations emerged that they had bribed their way to host the competition, has been harshly criticised by Amnesty International. This is because many migrant workers have been shipped in from poverty-stricken countries to build stadiums. In particular, the Khalifa Stadium and the Aspire Zone. For the privilege of working in Qatar, migrants pay to be sent there. However, many do not have the funds and are sent as indebted slaves by supposed recruitment agents who are really just human traffickers. They also live in terrible conditions, sleeping cramped in bunk beds like prisoners. They are often promised money, which was terrible in the first place, only to be told they will be paid substantially less after they arrive. When they do get their salary, it is often delayed by months. Qatar also has an identification card policy in place to stop workers from leaving their premises or work sites. They are often not given ID cards. This means they are imprisoned within the stadium confines or risk fines or imprisonment. Migrant workers have their passports confiscated and also cannot leave the country until they are granted an exit permit by the company they are working for. They are told they cannot leave until they fulfill their contract. And there is nothing to say the employer will honour this either. This is but a small glimpse at the problem of modern slavery, not taking into account individual cases of forced labour or small groups who run labour camps like the various cults in the world. This is just a small reminder that slavery still exists in the world, and perhaps we should be doing more to end this rather than fighting a forgotten past.